So I'm back to do another one of these first page critiques, and in the established pattern, I'm going to do one from a book I really liked. So we're interleaving these with the pages that were sent in to me, which I picked from a large body of pages that were sent in to me as ones where I felt that I had plenty of hopefully constructive criticisms to add. And I'm interleaving these with books that I loved, and the page ones will probably have very little to add and lots of things to point out and say this was great and this is how you do it, just to keep the whole thing a little bit more upbeat. I'm gonna just drop in some news, as I always do at the start of these videos if I have any, and that's just to say that I have handed in the third and final book of my library trilogy. It's a working title, could be Book of the Library, who knows, to my agent. So that will go off where if he'll read it, and if he's happy with it, then it will go off to my editor at Voyager first and enter the production process. The first book is going off to the proofreaders now, I believe, and the second book's in the pipeline. So I'm looking for new things to type, and this was my tweet on the subject, saying that my beta reader had read it and had a very emotional reaction to the last portion, and there's a little bit of AI art. I've done a video on that recently. This is just something that was produced. This one I think was by Thiago on my Discord, but it seemed very appropriate to the story, so it's there. And the first book, which is The Book That Wouldn't Burn, that's now listed on Goodreads, so you can mark it as to read, and you can find it on Amazon, so you can pre-order it. It comes out in May. I'm not going to say anything more about it at this point, but yeah, it's good. You should definitely pre-order it. So back to the page ones. So this is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Forgive me if I've said her first name wrong. And it's a duology, and it's excellent. It's one of my favorite books. They're both excellent in the last 10 years. I should do a thing on covers because, I, not having aphantasia, I don't form images in my mind. I don't really trust my cover instincts, and I always leave these things to the publisher, and generally speaking I don't have any choice in the matter anyway. It's not like they do these days ask my opinion, but I don't think it holds an awful lot of weight, and in my case that's probably a good idea. But to my mind, these excellent books have such understated covers that well, I'm not a fan of the covers. Let's put it that way. There's so much in the books. I feel like they deserve more. But if I actually try and think what I would give them, then that's more of a problem. They're all their covers, not all of them, but a lot of the covers for the books are here. And yeah, I mean, I like this one here, the gold and blue one, more than the one I just showed you. But yeah, I'm not actually sure what I would put, but the moth is central to not central, but significant in the story, so that's why that's there. Anyway, let's get on to page one. So, as always, there's a whole bunch of disclaimers that anyone who feels like they might be outraged should read first, and then by all means carry on and be outraged. And I will just read the first page, and then I'll go through it again with my comments. And as always, I'm not a great reader out loud. I'm not a great reader slowly. Internally, either I'm a very slow reader. I only get through about 10 books a year. I like to feel that I remember them better than the people who read 200 a year, but maybe I don't. Anyway, I'm not a fast reader in any sense of the word. So here goes. Mysteries of Weep. Names may be lost or forgotten. No one knew that better than Laszlo Strange. He had another name first, but it had died like a song with no one left to sing it. Maybe it had been an old family name burnished by generations of use. Maybe it had been given to him by someone who loved him. He liked to think so, but he had no idea. All he had were Laszlo and Strange. Strange because that was the surname given to all foundlings in the kingdom of Zosma, and Laszlo after a monk's tongueless uncle. He had it cut out on a prison gallery, on a prison galley, Brother Argos told him when he was old enough to understand. He was an eerie, silent man, and you were an eerie, silent babe. So it came to me, Laszlo. I had to name so many babies that year. I went with whatever popped into my head. He added as an afterthought, didn't think you'd live anyway. That was the year Zosma sank to its knees and bled great gouts of men into a war about nothing. The war, of course, did not content itself with soldiers. Fields were burned, villages pillaged, bands of displaced peasants roamed the raised countryside, fighting the crows for gleanings. So many died that the tumbrils used to cart thieves to the gallows were repurposed to carry orphans to the monasteries and convents. They arrived like shipments of lambs, to hear the monks tell it, and with no more knowledge of their provenance than lambs, either. Some were old enough to know their names at least, but Laszlo was just a baby, and an ill one no less. Grey as rain you were, Brother Argos said. Thought you sure to die, but you ate and you slept and your colour came normal in time. Never cried, never once, that was unnatural, but we liked you for it, fine. None of us became monks to be nursemaids. To which child Laszlo replied with fire in his soul, and none of us became children to be orphans. But an orphan he was, and a strange, and though he was prone to fantasy, he never had any delusions about that. Even as a little boy, he understood that there would be no revelations, no one was coming for him, and he would never know his own true name. Which is perhaps why the mystery of Weep captured him so completely. Apologies to the author for my various screw-ups on the lines there, but they were good lines. It was my fault. So I open there with my comment on the cover, and just saying again that, like Selin Ascends and any great book that I've read, there's no guarantee that I will be an enormous fan of the first page, because you can easily be a great book without having a great first page, and you can easily have a great first page without having a great book. But statistically speaking, the odds are much higher that I will be a fan if it's written very well. Chapter titles. That seems pretty old school. I don't think many books do it these days. Not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure it's more of a sort of children's thing. But I put epigraphs into my most recent books, and they're basically chapter titles, but extended. I'm fairly neutral on the whole idea. This is fine. So we open with a first line. The first period, the first full stop. Names may be lost or forgotten. I'm fairly neutral about that, but it's incredibly short. And if you put the first few lines together, then that's a nice opening. We immediately have a character to focus on. We're not just getting disembodied observations on the scenery or whatever. We've got a person, and it's an interesting name. It's the name from the front of the book, so we know we're on target, and we're zeroed in. People have just arrived, so if you hear any noise in the background, you'll have to put up with that. It's the carers bringing my daughter back from some trip they've taken her on, and I guess being that today is the Queen's funeral, there's not much going on outside, so their options to entertain her are limited. So yeah, I've zeroed in on the third line there. He'd had another name first, but it had died like a song with no one left to sing it. That is really good prose, and it's a sort of non-standard use of language. It's veering towards poetry, and immediately that tells us that this is a writer who is going to stretch the language, who is going to give us great prose, and that makes at least me, because I always appreciate that sort of stuff, suddenly have a warm feeling about the book. Immediately I know I'm in good hands, and I'm encouraged. And as always with writing, it's all a matter of taste, obviously, and some people will call writing that veers in this direction purple or flowery, and everyone has a line in a different place beyond which they say, oh, that now it's veered into purple. And so some people, if you move away from anything utilitarian, oh, that's flower, that's too purple for me. And it's just like spice in food. Some people like to have vindaloo curries, and some people can't abide anything that's not vanilla blancmange. But to my mind, this is in no way purple. This is just great writing. I often do read prose where I feel that the writer has lacked the skill and pushed too far and gone into purple territory, and then it becomes, to me, painful to read. So it's you have to be able to do these things well to go there. You can't just start reaching for weird combinations of words and hope that drag in the thesaurus and pick some fancy words and hope it's all going to work. It takes a lot of skill to achieve these things. The next line, maybe it had been an old family name burnished by generations of use. That's another great prose line. It's these are small things that turn simple lines into great lines. Nice linguistic steps, like here, just the concept of a name, which is obviously a nebulous, intangible thing, now being equated to an object, a physical object that can be burnished, polished by generations of use. That's a nice image to put in your head. It's not belabored, but it's again makes you. I've said there, Taylor's brave enough to colour outside the lines and skilled enough to make it look good, which harks back to my talking of what's purple and what isn't. So we go on and we talk about Laszlo and the how he got his name, and we get a bit of world building. We're talking about a kingdom, and so we've got a place, Kingdom of Zosma, and we get here what I like. I often refer, when we're talking about description, to use some pinpoint detail, to not just plaster as much of an area as you can in generics to describe this room, not to sort of belabor each and every single point and do it as efficiently as possible with just sort of plain simple language, but to pick out one or two things and actually say, a glass apple with a golden leaf, something specific. And the details don't matter, but the specificity gives the reader and their imagination confidence that this is real, that this place has to exist, because who would have just made up this and why? So the fact that he's named after a monk's uncle who lost his tongue, was cut out, that's a piece of detail we never return to again, as far as I know, in the book. It's never used, but it's adding color. It's a detail that nails you to the text and says, this is real. Who would have made up this one? It serves no purpose. That you're not being lied to. This is real. And when people are telling lies, if they want to do them successfully, you should embellish with some detail like that. And here, a brilliant line. That was the year Zosma sank to its knees and bled great gouts of men into a war about nothing. That feels very current, really, Ukraine. But it's a great line, and that could be, with a little tweak to make it fit, the opening line of the whole book, and people would remember it and say, on those things on Reddit where they have posts and they say, "Oh, just give me some great first lines." That would be a great first line. There's nothing wrong with putting it a couple of paragraphs down. It's a great line in situ as well. And there's a bit of world building there. We know that there's a war and it's generating all these orphans. And then we get a bit more about that war and about Laszlo's arrival at the convent, not the convent, the monastery. And it's all very atmospheric. It gives you a great ambience for the place. But it's still focused on Laszlo and his situation. It's not just sort of talking about the hills and the weather. it's to do with our character. It's building up our interest in this character and how we arrive there. And then we go on and we have some dialogue again, some more dialogue. That the monk is talking, and we're not just saying "and the monk said," and just a sort of top level description of the information the monk imparted. It's actual dialogue in speech quotes. We get his character shining through. And I always say, when you are describing something, describe it from a point of view, so that you're not just telling the reader about the thing that is being looked at, but you're informing them about the person doing the looking. And here, you can't read that and not come away with some sense of who that monk is, some sense of his character, which makes him more real to us. He appears to be a fairly no-nonsense, practical man. His compassion is delivered sparingly, but genuinely, and he's in a situation that he never expected to be. And Laszlo comes back, and we get now the sense of him being someone who talks back, someone who has his own strong opinions, even at a young age, and saying, I didn't expect to be here either. Children don't want to be orphans. And that gives, even in that very short line, it gives a sense of him that's intriguing, and that's great. And then at the end, so I always say that it's nice to have a problem here. The problem is a sort of general dispersed one of this child is an orphan, and that's never a great place to be. So no one was coming for him. He would never know his own true name. So that's a problematic situation for him. And I always say that you want to be left asking questions. You have questions that you want answers to. And at the very last line of this page, we return to the chapter title, which then means the chapter title has earned its keep. And we reference the mysteries of Weep, which are captivating Laszlo so completely. So we tie our character into this question. It's always good to weave all the parts of your narrative together. And the reader's left with a question: what is the mystery of Weep? Weep's a very odd name. I'm intrigued. I want to turn the page. And to conclude then, as a first page, yeah, I think this is a very good first page. There are, when I'm doing these videos, I offer a sort of fairly simple 101 template of how to do a good first page, but there are many different ways of approaching it. And one of them is, if you've got the prose skills, to lay out some of your prose wares on the first page, and that will tempt in a readership. So that's one of the things that Taylor's done here. It's a tour de force of prose, and anyone who's interested in that will say, yeah, give me more of this, and they'll just turn the page because they want to see what other lines she can come up with. But it also delivers us these two characters. It brings them to life in very minimal space. It deploys dialogue, and I always say dialogue is a great thing to have there because it builds character very rapidly, and it feels real and personal and engages people. It presents us with problems and with questions. The problem is that general one of the of being an orphan in a war-torn situation, of not being safe, and the question is a specific one. What is this mystery? That's at the top of the chapter, and at the bottom of the page, what's Weep? Who is this strange little boy that the book's named for, and how's he involved in all of this? And there's not much room on a page one, so I can't expect a full story there but this is a great hook. I think Taylor's done really well to grab potential readers on many levels, not give them any excuse for turning away. They will turn over the page, and the promises that are made on this first page are delivered on in spades as you go through the book. So it's the duology is, well, in my opinion, brilliant. It's full of emotion and imagination. It is not in any sense a dark book. There is some element of violence and some strong elements of threat, but it's not a book about sword wielding and great heroes in armor taking to the battlefield. It's entirely different. There is a romance thread through it, but it doesn't feel like a romance book to me. And I really loved it. So go read them. And that's all I have to say. And I'm going to turn off the video. Thanks for listening.